All of us are so busy day in and day out, and we think we're working towards the right goal. If I ask most people what's most important to you, they may say, well, my family is most important to me, or maybe it's my employees, or my business, or my health. All of those are valid, and you also can have multiple whys. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? But today, my guest, Dan Moore, author and TEDx speaker, poses the question, is your why a lie? And he explains that while we may say our family is most important, are we really present for them when we're with them? Or are we distracted with phone and work and other things that are pulling our attention away? So if your why really is your family, are you actually sabotaging it? And when we unpack this, you may say, my why is a lie, and I need to make some adjustments. I'm really excited. This is such an impactful, of such a powerful episode. I can't wait to share it with you. So let's dive into today's episode of You're in Charge, Conversations that Spark Change with Dan Moore. All right, Dan. So welcome back again. So happy to have you back on the show. So I wanted to have you back because now you can add TEDx speaker to your resume, and very proud of that. I wanted to talk to you about two things. One is the experience of that. I think we have a tendency to look at the TEDx speakers and we love what we see, but what it was really like going through that process, number one. But then I also want to really dive into your topic, which was, is your why a lie? So whichever way you want to go first. But again, thanks for being here.
Oh, always a pleasure. Excited to be on again. I mean, how many episodes are you on now, my friend?
By the time this airs, we're going to be closing in on 100.
Yeah. So hopefully I gamify this one to be 100. But if not, I'm close.
You'll be close.
It'll be close. But no, the TEDx experience, I mean, first, humbling, because you're like, okay, you set a target, you achieve it, then you're like, oh, now I got to deliver. Mm-hmm. So, the part of going through it, I would say, for me, was probably one of the most challenging because I wanted to get it so right. So there was a lot of conflict from,
go ahead. Let me just roll right back. So someone's going to be listening to this and they're going to say, well, now you're there. How did you even get chosen? That I think would be an interesting place to start. How did you get there? And then I definitely want to hear about this, how you actually did it.
Yeah. The book opened the door. Okay. So the book opened the door to that through some mutual friends, read the book and was like, hey, this is great. I'm going to host a TEDx. I want you there. So that was really kind of that premise to it. And again, it was a great event. Matt Boudreau and the Acton Academy, which if you want to look at education in schools, you've got to check out Acton Academy. What they're doing with kids is amazing. Mm-hmm. They actually had their students running the event.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So super cool. Just the way that they operate and teach and empower these young children to just, go kind of tap into that entrepreneurial mindset. It's really incredible. So that was exciting. Okay. Along with the journey of getting ready for TED. It was a good, as I always say, it's always good to have internal struggles. That whole fight of, okay, what am I going to talk about? Is your why a lie was like, it took me a while to land there. And it finally just clicked through some conversations I had with you, for example. I mean, you played a heavy hand in me bouncing ideas and just being a soundboard. I'm thinking this, and you'd be like, okay, that's great, but what if, or what about this, or punch some holes. And it's like having such a good circle of friends that I can reach out to that look at me in different ways and know how I think and go, because my goal is to be as authentic as possible. Like, there's no fluff, there's no BS, there's no like, hey, that's somebody else's material. I wanted to be right on line with pieces from the book, but even some new content that really challenged the way people think. Because obviously we all watch a lot of TED. I picked up so many nuances of, it's not me giving you action, it's me making you think. And so I really wanted to pull at the emotional strings to kind of go, ooh, that hurts a little bit.
Okay.
I need to do some self-reflection. So that was kind of the driver behind everything.
So for the audience again, TED, you are limited to 16 minutes, 18 minutes.
It's really like right now it's between 10 and 18 minutes is kind of the sweet spot where they want you to land.
Okay. So when you're crafting your talk, walk me through the how do we tell the whittling away. I think I've always been fascinated with TED because it seems, to your point, they're not saying here's a list of things to do. They want to inspire you to go out and question or learn or be inspired to move on and dive in more. So walk us through a little bit of, how did you whittle it down? How do you decide what sticks, what goes, to come up with this focus on your message?
Yeah, that was the challenging part too, because you want to, even in the friend circles, you're careful how much you give up because it takes the O out of it. So I started just kind of breaking it into fundamentals of, if I'm hitting on why, first I've got to unpack why. It's like telling a story. First I got to tell you, let's unpack why a little bit. Then I got to get you into that state of where I start to reach in and I start to pull at some emotions. And then I've got to exit on the pieces that make you go back and reflect on, is your why a lie, right? So it really kind of was an interesting journey, which led me into kind of the opening of why, right? So the quick, again, it's so funny when you do this, you can get through it quick. So opening up with why, we talk about why as being a child and so curious, like the purest point of curiosity there is being a child. Why is the sky blue? Why is purple purple? Like you get why to death, right? And then we talk about, as we age up a little bit more, our why kind of takes a pivot or a turn and it becomes, why me? Why is this happening? Why do they have X, Y, or Z? And your why starts to shift from curiosity to more of a little bit of like pity or, unhappiness or, kind of just diverting away from your own true happiness.
So do you think it moves from why, as you were saying, that inquisitiveness of a child, to what I heard in that description as you aged up was your why starts to pivot a little to comparison more than just pure why?
You do, and you think about it too, because again, I talk about the phone and social media, and it's like, think about it. We're constantly in that state of comparison, addiction. So it just starts to make sense because we've been pulled away from that being just curious, and we don't ask questions as much. And society plays a heavy hand in that because, again, if I ask too many questions, why are you being nosy? Why are you in my business? Why do you ask so many questions? And you're like, well, I'm just seeking to understand. I want more information. But again, we go through that whole phase and you start thinking about it and you're like, wow, okay, I really have changed. I should ask more questions. That explains a lot. So you could see people following along in that particular moment. And then just the pull of, holding up the phone and saying, hey, listen, this device is probably the greatest utility ever placed in the palm of our hand, but at the same point in time, the greatest addiction, right? And everybody's like, yeah. And then you kind of, and then you kind of equate it to, think about that last time that you misplaced your phone, you didn't have service, all those different points, and that fear, right? That fear of missing out, that those emotions that kind of come over you, like, oh, panic. I mean, we've all been there. And then you kind of start to bring them back full circle and say, now think about those feelings, right? Now think about the last time you had those same exact feelings, that fear of missing out, with your spouse, with your family, with yourself, with your life, right? Because we get so distracted by life, we forget about our own self at time. We forget about, are we going down the path that we wanted to? Are we chasing our goals? Or are we just simply kind of going through the motion because that's what society's taught us? So it becomes an interesting journey along the way.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because a few episodes ago, I interviewed a gentleman named Garland Vance, and he wrote a book called Getting Unbusy. And he was talking about how being busy is a badge of honor, and how a lot of times people are just busy without direction. They're doing things because either they think they should be doing things, but they don't have a goal in mind. They don't have an end point. So then they also default to that comparison, right? Like you were saying, I'm going to compare myself to someone else. And then all of a sudden say, well, I just have to work harder. But they may not even know why they're working on what they're doing or what the end result is going to be. And so you just, become more busy.
Right.
And
what is working harder?
Yes, exactly.
Like that's the whole piece that I think we get hung up on, is we're told, hey, if you're not getting up at 2:00 in the morning and crushing it, and if you're not doing this and you're not winning, it's like, well, wait a minute. It's like those, I love it. I used to say all the time, I'm a multitasker. And then when you start to unpack all those different points, you go, wait a minute. Basically, all I am is a jack of all and master of none.
Right.
So you have to have intention. You have to be extremely intentional in everything that you do, because again, your most precious commodity, which is time, has to be put in the right direction, or you don't accomplish anything. To your point, you just kind of limp along, if you will.
No, and that's what that gentleman said in his book. His question always was, because it happened to him, he made a conscious decision to say, what do I want? And I love this. He goes, what do you want the pace of your life to be? Like, I love that, because then he said, once you understand that, then you control, then you can work as hard as you want towards a goal. You have a direction versus, and I thought your example was spot on, where it's, I'm not up at 3:00, I must be a loser. If I'm not working 87 hours a day, I'm a loser. If I'm not doing 47 things, I'm not doing enough. And so you just start doing things to say, well, look, I'm doing things, but it's not getting you anywhere.
Right. I mean, it's like posting on social media, high frequency. What is it getting you? What is the intention behind what you're doing? Right. Well, I'm just posting because that's what everybody else is doing. Okay, well, that takes time. That's time and energy. And if it doesn't fit with what you're doing, then you got to reevaluate. And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, we hear it all the time, especially even in our industry, right? Well, that's the way we've always done it. It's like, well, that doesn't mean it's right.
Right. I think it's always that idea of, if I have a direction, if I have a goal, then the actions I'm taking are either bringing me towards it. Now, there are people that posting on social media is helping them achieve their goal, grow their business, 100%. Right? That's fine. But if you're just posting with the hope of, it makes me feel good if someone likes it, that's risky, because then you're putting your self-worth into this addictive machine. And then what happens when I don't get the likes, or I don't get the response I think I should? Then it's either, well, I need to do more, or now I start doubting myself. And that's a slippery slope to go down.
Well, and not to mention, is that taking you away from your goals? So if you're saying your family is your why, but you're on social media all the time to feel that affirmation, then wait a minute here for a second. We got to reevaluate, because again, you're not putting your time buckets off. You're putting your time in the wrong bucket, not the right bucket. So it's a challenging thing, because a lot of times people are like, well, what is it exactly? It's like, well, there is no exactly. It's whatever you deem. And that's where you've got to put it into perspective, because what I choose to do is going to be different than what you choose to do. Where our buckets are, where our time goes. There's no, we are individuals for the sake of being individuals.
Yes. And so, I think it's very easy to default to that comparison from the outside, right? How many people, we all know people in our lives, and those of you in the audience, I'm sure you know people where you'll say, oh, they looked so happy. And then you wonder why they got a divorce, or I thought they were X, but they were Y, because what they were showing to the world was different than the reality. But you were comparing yourself to the image and adjusting your life to their image, when in reality, they weren't really that happy behind the scenes to begin with.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So let's talk about that, because we've been dancing around a little bit, setting it up. So the topic is your why a lie. I remember when you reached out to me, you said, this is my talk, is your why a lie. And I was like, okay, explain that to me. What do you mean by that? So to those listening, when you say, is your why a lie, share what your thoughts, what that means, and what you shared in the TED Talk around that topic.
Yeah. So simply put, using myself as an example, I mean, easy wife, 3 amazing daughters. My why is my family, right? But if we start being curious and asking questions over a course of time, when I was traveling 6-7 days a week, when, constantly airport to airport, meeting to meeting, device in my hand, literally my wife is talking to me and I'm just like, yeah, honey. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
No, good. So again, at that point in time in my life, I'd say my why was a lie. So when you start understanding what it is you're doing, right? What it is you're doing, what you're doing, who you're doing it for, what you're doing it for, you got to kind of self-inspect that. And again, the hardest thing we can ever do is get up every morning and look in that mirror and say, am I doing the things that I am supposed to be doing, right? And what is that? So that pivot of measurement, and that's where I kind of, again, is your why a lie? I think we've all through our life, what do you want to, who do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? What's your why? Why do you do what you do? We've been asked it so many different ways. We give a very surface level response because that's what we're trained to do. We've lost that curiosity, or the second someone questions our why, then it becomes a point of defensiveness, because again,
Right.
Wait a minute, there must be chink in the armor here, because if you're automatically going defensive, if someone starts to ask you a few more questions, I mean, that's an immediate red flag. But that was kind of the whole premise to it. Was there was a point in my life where I was like, basically my why was a total lie. And I had to reevaluate, revamp, and reset the goal to, if my family is everything, and that is my why. So creating memories, because that's really kind of how I look at everything with my family. Is the goal is to create as many memories as possible, because at the end of the ride, that's all we're left with. It isn't how much money you have. It isn't the cars, the toys, the whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's the memories and those people that you shared it with. And the majority of those memories are your family. So that really kind of drove that for me.
So then someone listening might push back, or let me be them for you, and saying, okay, well, in that situation, your job required you to be on the road, leave on a Sunday, leave on a Monday, come back on a Thursday. So for that, if you're saying, well, if my family was most important, does that mean then making sure that you're checking in with them, or making sure that when you're home, they're 100%? Walk me through that, because someone might say, well, listen, I have to work, Glenn, or Dan, I have to work. I mean, yeah, my family, I'm doing this for them. So how could someone make adjustments in that framework to be living their family as their most important?
No, several different ways. I mean, and again, that was a beautiful thing about TED is, there was another speaker there that literally moved to Barbados, like left his job, said, we're going to simplify life. I'm all about, and they went crazy. So there's the extreme, right? But I got to share it, because there's the question that really is that person that's probably watching this right now and going, I'm not sure I'm bought in just yet. Or to your point, Glenn, yeah, I got a job. Okay. Not saying you got to do anything about quitting your job. If you have a job and you're making money, but yet your family is your why, and you're on 24/7, 365, there becomes a point to where you've got to be able to, the balance is a cliche word, because it's really not balancing. I call it, basically overdrawing your account at times. But when you walk in that door, even though you may have some work to do, it's, hey, right now, I've got to put the next 3 hours into my family, because they're coming home from school. We're going to have dinner, and then they're going to go to bed. So that means I've got 3 hours on the tail end of that I got to put in to get work done. So that's where it's not being busy. That's where it's being intentional. So
right.
For me, some of the things that I did, I did change jobs, but it didn't mean that the task didn't become I was able to control the job better, meaning I didn't allow the travel to get out of control. But what I did do was set boundaries in the fact of, and again, you'll always have relapse. I'm saying you can give up the phone for here and there, but it happens. But we have dinner and there's no devices at the table. I think that rule is more for me than anybody else in my household, but that's a fair rule, right?
Right.
But when you start setting rules and communicate as a family, and again, that's a conversation with the family, like, hey, we're going to have no device at the table, we're going to talk about our day, we're going to do different. When you start setting the expectation and the standard, then it becomes the way of life. I mean, even today I have teenage daughters and we still have no devices at the table.
Right.
So there's things that happen along the way. There's no perfect formula, but the first step is acknowledging it and then making adjustments to better. And each day, I always say, when you get up every day, you ask yourself one thing as you're brushing your teeth in the mirror, whatever it is you do in the morning, whatever your routine is that you look yourself dead in the face. You go, was I better than yesterday, the day before? Like, if you're constantly making progress, great. The days that you have a setback and you say, man, yesterday was a big setback. What am I going to do different today to make up for yesterday? And when you have those conversations, and when, if you have to write it down, again, some people have to get up every morning, write their goals down. Mm-hmm. Everybody has different ways. So what I would tell everybody watching is do what works for you. Just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean you have to. I don't necessarily write everything down. I have a conversation with myself every morning. It helps start the day.
Right.
It allows me to kind of silence everything in my head and hold myself accountable. Now I'll go into my office, I'll write a few checklist things like these are the key things I want to get accomplished. I never have more than 5 because for all of you that are in the real trenches, you know the deal. You could have 2 pages of everything you want to get done today. Good luck. You'll get maybe 1 or 2 done.
Right.
So I always say, shoot realistic. Everything that you're doing has to be realistic. Start with the easiest wins and then have your bigger wins become more of a mid or long term, because we're humans. If you set a crazy goal that is very hard to reach and it's high up on the top of the hill and you don't get there, or you get halfway and you hit some turbulence, you're going to fail and go back down again. It's like 75 hard challenge.
Right.
You got to set little milestones to keep the momentum going that helps you get those bigger ones along the way. So I just tell everybody watching, there's no perfect formula. It's one foot in front of the other, and you've got to do what works for you. Start with the easy thing and then add the more complex things. If the phone is the hardest thing for you to let go, find the easier ones, or just find a little bit of time. Like, hey, I'm going to put my phone in phone jail for 30 minutes or an hour and be a part of dinner or whatever it might be. I guarantee you, because again, I was that guy too. I was Mr. You can call me and I'll answer anytime, any day, anywhere. 30-minute delay isn't going to change the world. There's nothing the house will never be on fire enough for the fact that you can't disconnect for 30 to 45 minutes and have time with your family.
No, I think just to unpack a few things there that I hope you are, all of you listening or watching or, writing down these notes. I think it's the words that keep popping into my head are intentional and also being present. Right? When you're at work, be present at work, or if you're in a meeting, be present in that meeting. But when you come home, I had very similar challenges as well, because, running a business, you never turn off. But I did the same thing, probably talking with you, a year ago, but I've been doing it, or over time, we've been doing it for a while, is when I would come home, everything went away. Just leave it, just be present. And then after dinner, maybe a half an hour, go check in, do things. But I was guilty of the same thing, of cooking and talking to the kids, but having a phone near me, or a text came right in the middle of a conversation and I would look away from them and go, ooh, what's that? And it could have been a text from somebody. It could have been a notification. I turned all notifications off from social media off of my phone as well, because they were a distraction from me being present. And I think so those 2 words of intentionality, of saying small little wins in order to be present, because you can do that. So again, it's not, I need to quit my job and go to Barbados, but when I'm working, I'm working. When I'm home, I'm home. If I'm traveling, I have a ritual of calling every night to spend some time, FaceTime or whatever, because if that is your importance, well, then days shouldn't go by that you don't talk. right? So I love that intentionality. I love that idea of putting something in place to help you achieve this why, or else your why is a lie and you could end up losing it because you're focusing on the wrong thing.
Right. Well, 100%. And to kind of piggyback on that, I mean, if you get a chance to watch the TED, it's not up yet, but when it does, but one of the things that kind of segues into that is that to unpack your why is a simple formula of CAST. So curiosity, right? We've got to be curious.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have action, which is being intentional. You have to take action. Nothing happens. It's kind of like one of those things. A goal without action will forever be a dream. You have to put one foot in front of the other to make things happen. No matter what, intention and action are the combination to getting things done. And then, so we've got that. Then we've got S, self-awareness. You've got to have the self-awareness and the discipline to hold yourself accountable. It sucks. It's not fun. But when you get to that level, man, things start to kind of click. And then finally, you just have to live life as the fact of, you have one ticket, right? One ticket on this ride called life. So when the ride is up and you step off, do you really want to be full of regret? Or do you want to be full of fulfilled with all the things that you did, the time that you spent with your family, the things that you did for your community, the work that the legacy of your work and what you achieved, whatever those things are. Again, you have one ticket. And when you really frame it in, you got the one ticket on this ride called life, it does change because there's no guarantee.
Yes.
And that ride could end before you think it does. So you've really got to kind of accelerate your thought process and what you do because there's no guarantee.
No, I think that's one of the best, excuse me, that thought of the ticket, because you don't know when the ride's going to end. We all like to think we know, but we don't know. And so every day you're making those deposits. And again, I go back to that word intentional, those deposits into what you feel is important, right? So that's my why. And if it's my family, at the end of the day, you should be saying, what did I put into that? What did I deposit into that account today? And some days it's going to be more, some days it's going to be less. Maybe a Saturday, like you said, where we're going on a vacation and it's fully, every day is cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And other days I'm traveling and it's just a couple, but you're aware of it. You're intentional about it and you understand that is, and you make decisions through that lens of what's important versus getting distracted by a myriad of other things that all of a sudden will potentially claim to be like a mirage. Oh, this is way more important than your family. Oh, this is going to help your family. And then all of a sudden you haven't made deposits. I think what you're talking about here is so important because it's easy to just get busy for busy's sake, like we talked about earlier, and you wake up a couple years later and that bank is closed.
Well, and again, this is the other part, back to self-awareness on that one too, is that we make deposits, right? But sometimes we're not aware of the withdrawals we're making. So you do the right thing, you show up at the dinner table, you're there, you're depositing into that bucket, right? But then you're sitting there having a conversation with your spouse. And again, that notification pops on the phone and you go, and then you come back and you've lost that conversation. All of that, what you just put in what you just deposited, you just drew a deficit now because you just said you're not important to me.
Right. And for those not watching, basically, Dan, I mean, for the people listening, Dan sitting there going, just looking away, right? All of a sudden that notification became more important than the person you're talking to. So 100%. There's your why is a lie, because if my spouse is the most important in this conversation, then me getting up and walking to go get something, even if it's something to drink, is like, well, where the hell are you going? Or you're looking at your phone, or you hear a ding and you become addicted to it. Those things you may not think are important because you could say, well, I'm still here, I'm still listening, but are you? Are you? If you flush the toilet down, I think one of the best things you ever said was, what happens? That's why I loved your talk, is that feeling of when you don't have service, when you have a feeling that you can't connect, or you ran out of, or it's broken, you literally get nauseous.
Yeah.
But do you do that for, if your spouse, like, I'll say most people would say, no, I don't. And I think that's why it's so important to discuss this topic.
Well, and that's kind of it. We go through life, and it goes back to the ticket, right? So you have one ride on this, but yet you're missing the boat, because you can't live without your phone. If it's disconnected, you have this feeling, but then you can go through life, your kids, your wife, and not miss a beat, do the things, and totally take it for granted. And then all of a sudden, one day when that ride comes to an end, the amount of regret that comes over you, it's like, you didn't have to. You chose to.
So, all right, something popped into my head. It's a slight pivot, but I think this is it can apply also to this idea of being present. So, great. A lot of people will say their why is their family. Some people will say their why is their career, right? They might say, I don't have a
Nothing
family,
wrong with it.
right? So then my business is my why, or my team is my why. So put this same conversation through the lens of business, where if I'm sitting here saying my team is the most important thing, or my business or my employees are the most important thing to me, pivot just a little into the business side of your why could be a lie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So first, I'm going to say this too, as we seg into this, is that your why, there isn't one why. There's a multitude of whys. So don't think that, okay, well, family, it can be family and business. There can be layers. No one put rules on this. So as we segue now into the business side of it, let's have some fun. First and foremost, you want to show your team how much you matter? Keep showing up late and rescheduling meetings. You basically just sent the ultimate signal how much they matter, right? I've been guilty. Show up 5-10 minutes late, got tied up on another call. Bottom line is, if you value your people, you have to show up and you have to be present. Meaning, if I'm having a meeting and all of a sudden I go, oh, I got to take this call, it's dangerous. The same rules apply. People are people.
Right.
If you're having a one-on-one and you're distracted, that's why I say meetings are dangerous. And everybody watching and running a company, keyword, have intentional meetings. Meeting on a meeting about a meeting just to get people to, like fluffiness, like stop. If you're having a meeting, what is it we're trying to accomplish? There's a point to the meeting. If you're having like weekly updates, we kind of, again, for us, we'll have like, weekly updates. And again, you kind of get a state of what everything's going on in the business. And it's an overview. It's only X amount of time. And then you move into some of the more critical meetings. But again, our life is full of meetings. So especially with the team, we have to show them the same respect we would show our family. It's that same exact intentionality of, I'm here, I'm on time, I'm present. What do we want to accomplish? And
it can be the flip side too. I know we're talking about leaders running the meetings, but how many times we've all been in meetings where someone else is talking and we're looking at our phone. Or now we used to have a rule of no computers, no phones in the meetings, turn them off, turn them over, whatever.
Different world now.
Some people would sit there and say, oh, I'm going to, take notes, but then G chat's up there or they're working. So realistically, I think this is, again, going back to that intentionality and presence. How much time do we waste in meetings because people were distracted by something else? And next thing you know, they say, oh, sorry, Dan, what were you saying? And so 1, disrespectful. 2, we just wasted time, versus we're going to spend 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever the number is, all hyper-focused, and we can all get out of here, versus a meeting for an hour and you go, this could have been an email, right? That's the joke.
100%. No, it is a joke. And I do think some of it's how you set your culture up. You've got to give people the opt-out right, because again, some people get pulled into meetings that are in there and they're like, there's nothing I can contribute here.
Right.
Like you got to have no one should feel stuck in a meeting. I always say, if there's no value here or there's nothing to contribute, you have the right to back out.
Right.
But at the same point in time, especially now, because you can't put your device away, because 9 times out of 10 we're doing Zoom calls or Google Meets or whatever, so you're on a device. But I think that you've got to have intentionality. I think that you've got to, depending on the type of meeting, there's flexibility and some humor and some kind of, it can kind of go off the rails a little bit and then you bring it back. For the rigid stuff where you're trying to move something along to the point, have a cadence, keep it, herd all the cats, get to the objective, get to the end result. And to your point, could it start on an email? And if it needs to progress to that, great. But again, it's just having that conversation with the team, setting the guidelines to how you guys want to navigate meetings or conversations, and then being intentional in those moments and having some accountability measures, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of team camaraderie, team kind of coming together and saying, hey, Dan, not a good time for you? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Right.
You got me, right? Shame on me. And that's part of also having a good team. If your team can't call you out, especially if you're a leader or whatever, then you got to question some of your leadership, because again, we're in this together. The team is really the mechanics of everything. We're just there to clear the runway. So we've got to be held accountable too, because again, if we're just saying, I'm so busy, what I'm doing is excusable, what you're doing isn't, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So pace the leader, pace the pack. So if you're captain, I'm on my phone and half in a meeting, you can't expect your team to be in the meeting either.
Well, that's the poor leader would do that. All of a sudden they'd put their phone down and say, okay, well now you put all your phones away, because now I'm ready. I'm mentally here. So snap to order when someone else is presenting and they're sitting there on their phone. Or I've seen it a million times, is let me go take this call. And everyone goes, well, now we're stuck here for 20 minutes. Like, we can't move the meeting forward till Dan comes back. And where's Dan? And next thing you know, we're going, and everybody starts working. But the energy of the meeting just goes, this is why I hate meetings, versus ignoring that. I mean, literally, if you left your phone in the office and you're in another office for a meeting, you wouldn't know that the phone rang. You'd go pick it up later on and go, oh, Glenn called. Let me call Glenn back. Right. I think that's where everything we've been talking about is that intentionality of being present, because the people here are important to me. And it could be my family, it could be my friends, it could be my employees or my boss or whoever. The fact is, when I'm here with you, it's important to me. So nothing else should matter. So then act that way.
Agreed. And also show some humility. I mean, I can't tell how many times I've had to apologize to the team because I made the cardinal sin, right? Or, hey, Dan, this is a question for you. Ooh, yeah, sorry, wasn't paying attention. Instead of trying to oof through it, it's like, no, dude, my bad. Like you've got to fall on the sword a couple times, because again, we're human. Nobody's perfect. So you're going to, as I call them, you're going to have relapses. The question is can you catch it? Meaning, there's been times where I'm talking to my wife and the phone starts and I go, I'm sorry. And I just sidearm it to the side and going, sorry, it got me, but I'm still here. Yeah. And then other times, I'm in it, and then the talking, because her cue to me now is, I'll just stop talking to you. So the second it goes silent, right? I'm like, yep, I know. But again, it's accountability. And that's what I'm saying. You should never be off limits.
Right.
To your family or to your team. I don't care what your position is and how high and mighty you think you are. You should never be off limits. You can't. No, I think you can't expect everybody else to align, and then you get the exception. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, no, I think that's what was interesting. What you were saying earlier is, and you and I share the same philosophy of, my job as the leader, whatever position I'm in, is no important than anybody else's. I just do different things. But
if you're going to build a culture, which is a word that gets thrown around all the time, but if you're going to build a successful team and a successful
are you saying it's a
organization,
buzzword? Are you saying it's a buzzword?
that could be a
I
buzzword.
I
feel like this is a buzzword. There's a lot of buzzwords. Culture, and no one knows what it is. But I think, to your point, is that if we're building an organization where we're all focused on the goal and we're all working hard, that we should all, as teammates, no matter what your rank is, we're successful. To that point, there was a gentleman I was having a conversation with who was a new general manager and took over an automobile dealership, but this could be any business, right? And it was failing. And one of the best things he said he did was he took everybody's business cards away and he replaced every business card, and everybody had the title manager. He says, you all worked to drive this into the ground. We're all going to work together to build it up. So by giving everyone the title of manager, everybody was empowered to talk. Everyone was empowered to fix the problems without fear of, I can't say that to X, Y, Z.
Yep.
I thought that was just a brilliant strategy. And, 4 years later, it's one of the top, most well-run organizations I've run across.
Well, and that's a key word right there that you said, is the word empower.
Mm-hmm.
If you want people to do their job, and again, you think about how many businesses we go into, and it's like, I can't find good people, they don't want to work, all these things that go around. Now, there's some truths in some of it.
Sure.
But we also have to ask more questions is what are we doing? What's our contribution to the problem?
Right.
Because again, there's those leaders that are very micromanager style, which means you can't sneeze without it coming through me. So then therefore they're never going to have an idea.
Right.
And then there's others where it's like, yes, I empower you, just like you were talking about. You have the same power I do. Now, if something goes sideways, and again, I have the same methodology as well, is I didn't hire someone to make my job harder.
Right.
I hired someone to do that job and empower them to make the decisions. If something doesn't work right, or there's something that went wrong, I'm not going to go tear them a new one. I'm just going to say, let's have a conversation. Why? First off, why? Imagine that. Why did we do this, right? What was the goal of that decision? What were you trying to solve? And if you could do something differently based on what occurred, what would you have done differently?
Right.
Because again, everybody's we are so buzzword cliche in the sense of, a lot of business fail fast and fail often. And then you go to their business and it's like the second someone makes a mistake, they're getting crucified. You're like, yeah, totally want to fail here.
Right. Right. So on that point, I think as we pivot a little bit, one last pivot here, to take that, because I think we would be remiss, because I know you explain it so well, is this idea of, if I have a team and I train them really well to do their job to the point that I don't have to, what you mentioned, micromanaged, or I feel that, wow, my team is really executing well. For some, that's scary. They think, well, maybe they don't need me, versus what you and I were talking about before we jumped on today, this idea of, by clearing off some of those things off of my plate and empowering them to do this, my plate is empty and I can add on new things that will help the organization move forward, versus we're both trying to do someone's job versus, no, that's your job, I have other things to do. Talk about that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different fundamentals to it, but essentially, there comes a point to where you have to be in the weeds, and there's time where you got to come out of the weeds. I can't help someone grow if I don't understand the job. So I get in the weeds, shoulder to shoulder, we go through whatever that might be. But again, as we kind of grow and develop, it moves past the points where, again, that comes off my plate. I can fill it with another task, another, goal, another action, whatever it might be. And it changes because, again, depending on your role, whether you're, the CEO, a president, a manager, whatever, there's other things. So it's, freeing up more time to go coach and develop. It's freeing up time to go seek that next partnership or that bigger deal, or, the future of the, platform. If you're running a software company, there's always stuff to be put on the plate. The
Right.
question is, what are you allowing to get on your plate that is preventing you from the bigger picture? And that's always a challenge, always has been a challenge. And I do feel fortunate. I mean, obviously we're a smaller company, so it's a little bit easier. I mean, I get all the time, well, Dan, you know, when you get more people, it becomes more challenging. I'm like, it's all scale. I mean, if you build the right people, you build the right bench. And as you move up and you build more people and you build more layers of management, if that management has the same mantra that you do and doesn't fear their job so that they have to be the one, look at what I'm doing all the time, it's just getting it done, it can multiply. And if you understand that, and you understand, hey, there's just some people that work and don't work for positions, it does change the game. But yes, I don't have a fear of I've got to validate my position, or if all these people are doing these things and my plate looks different, I don't have any fear, because it's like I get to do something else. There's other things that start to free up and clear out to where it's almost a reciprocal effect. I've cleared their runway so they can get the planes off the ground and run the way they need to. By doing that, it almost does the same thing for me so that I can get off the ground and focus on the things that are critical to the growth of the company. Right. Because again, if we're all doing it, then everybody wins. There's more growth in the company, which means whether that's revenue, whether that's people, whatever, everybody starts to win because they feel all of those impacts. But yet the point is they're a contributor.
Well, and well, what I like about that is, and again, a few people, I want to make sure you're not misunderstanding what Dan was saying, is that if I'm working with the team, if I need to scale and grow eventually, you know, if I had a team of 5 people and we expanded and now we have 10 people, well, eventually I have to get someone else up there if 5 is the limit. And then eventually as we scale, I have now 3 or 4 people who are that middle layer. That's my team. I'm not worried about the bottom people. I'll check in. Really, my team is that. And as I scale up, there's always a team under me. But to your point is, if we're all focused on doing the same job, we're only going to get so far. Correct. Because no one's able to pick their head up and go, hey, we need to go that way. We're just, as you say, we're all in the weeds. And someone's going, yeah, but we should be going that way. So we have to clear that plate. But it is a strange feeling as you escalate up, because you may lose that, that I'll call it like the buzz or the high of really being in the weeds. It's very addicting. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there feeling, well, I'm not really having an impact, but you are, because your impact is on that next layer down that impacts that. So almost, there was a gentleman 2 weeks ago I interviewed, and he said something I thought was spot on. He said, the higher you move up in leadership, it becomes more about building relationships with your teams versus, you know, going down into the tactical, because you've left the tactical now because you have to build relationships with that layer of people who are coaching those people on the front lines. And I thought that was a really good way. And relationships, building relationships, they feel different. But to your point is, if you're accepting of that, you then are looking in a different direction to be able to do more for your team.
100%. And that's just, but it's uncomfortable. And to simply, you know, kind of put it in perspective too, for those watching, is just think of it this way. You always should be training your replacement. If you have that mindset, that comes back to self-awareness. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I do what I do. It should be acknowledged. But at the same point in time, if you're going to get to the next level, which is if someone's chasing their career, right, it's that next level, then why aren't you training your replacement?
Well, the fear is, if I train you to do what I need to, what I'm doing, the fear is, well, they're going to fire me and keep Dan for whatever reason, because now, again, that also depends on the person who's above me, right? As we escalate up, always remember, if I get promoted to team leader, I'm on someone else's team, right? Yep. So I sit at the table of someone else now who I report to. So the question really is that person empowering me or grooming me or training me and moving me up? If not, then I feel, well, listen, if I train somebody, I'm not getting that pull up to say someone's looking to groom me to take their place. The only option is if I get these other people really good, then I'll get fired. But to your point, a really well organization should always be saying, Dan, I want you to replace me, but I can't have you replace me till you find somebody to replace you. And that should constantly be the conversation through organizations in order to scale, because then it goes back to what we were talking about, the why. If the employees really are the most important thing, then I should be hoping and working towards them improving their position, their skill set to do more. If that's really important, then I have to, as you said earlier, I'll act on it and do it, not just lip service.
100%. And to really kind of mind melt everybody on that point you just made is, if you have a fear of being fired, then you've got to think to yourself, well, if I'm not going to level someone up because they might fire me or someone, there's so many different ways I've heard it spun, and someone asked the question, how do you get past it? And I look at it as, if I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get fired on my terms, not somebody else's. You don't control what you don't control. So if someone doesn't like you, they can fire you. If you want to run in fear all the way, that's how that works. So at the end of the day, if I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get fired because I pushed all in, and I'm going to let it happen for me. Meaning, I stood my ground, I did my job, I pushed through the barriers. If that wasn't good enough and you fired me, I'm not considering that a loss on my end.
No, you just are on the wrong team, right? That's the key, is that you're on the wrong
100%.
Right.
And if you've got that kind of mindset and that kind of mojo going for you, as we always joke, you're only a phone call or a social media post away from being rehired, because people will know who you are by the job that you do. And again, that separates everybody in any industry. Is everybody come in and has great lip service. It's the action that you do that will cement your business status and what you can accomplish. I didn't get to where I'm at just because I said, hey, I'm good at whatever, or like, none of that happened. It happened because people saw the action, they saw the result. Talk is cheap. Everybody, I mean, how many times, Glenn, I'm sure you and I could share stories back and forth. Somebody comes in, has a beautiful resume, man, they have mastered the art of interviews. They get in and like nothing happens.
Right.
And you're like, what?
No, you were sold a bill of goods, or they sounded good and everyone was on their best behavior. But I think that that's such a, to just sort of wrap this all and wind this down with just these final thoughts, is it goes back to the why. If your why is for your family, for your company, for your friends, for yourself, then that means I'm present. I want people. I am concerned, not in a bad way, but my action should be aligned in a way that I'm not worried about what people say behind my back. Meaning that if somebody asks somebody about, let's say you, I know what they're going to say, and it's all going to be the same, because your actions led to people having that opinion of you, whether they worked with you, they met you, they heard about you, it's all aligned. But if your why isn't important, or you're not present, or your actions don't align, that's where you get that disconnect of, well, I hope they don't find out, or, a little song and dance, or what I call jazz hands, and you're not really delivering on it because you were not intentional to begin with.
Oh yeah. And it's only a matter of time. I mean, that's the thing. If you're playing the long game, you've got to have the depth. The short game is exactly what it is. It's very short. When you have no substance, you're flighty, you're not focused, you can flush it out. Even the best people that say, oh, I write my goals down, I do this, look at me, I'm crushing life. Man, some of us get more exposure than we need at times, and you just kind of go, wow. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some people that are going to be like, wow, didn't see that. So,
well, they also, you and I have seen people it's the story, and the story can run but then you go, well, why do you keep moving jobs, right? Why are you always in different places? And versus if that really was aligned, it doesn't make sense, right? That's where as you said, the advertisement doesn't live up to the reality.
But I think there's one critical point before we wrap up that everybody takes a second and hears, is that your why could be something as simple as this. I'm going to make a comfortable living and I'm going to enjoy my life. That is 100% okay.
Yes.
And we're in a society where they don't make that okay. And you know what? It's kind of funny. I think we got to take a step back and realize that it doesn't matter what you said it beautifully. People will talk, behind your back, so on and so forth. And you get to the point where if you're really comfortable in your own skin, you don't care. And I think that is a huge, huge, huge piece is when you get comfortable in your own skin and your why is as clear as it can be, nothing else matters.
Right. Right. No, I think I was listening to, and I've said it, and I'm not always as good as it will sound like I am, and I'm not as that, my head gets a little twisted at times, but at the end of the day, I know there's a circle of people, family and very close friends. If they came to me and said, I'm disappointed, that would mean something and have an impact. Or someone I don't know, someone who I haven't, even a nice relationship with, that doesn't bother me. But that goes back to you. If you're aligned and that's your goal, that goes back to what you want your pace of life to be. Gary Vaynerchuk always says that, hey, listen, if you make 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever the number is, and you want to play on 2 softball teams and you want to take your family out and that's great for you, great, own it, but don't complain, right? If you're then going to complain about something, then say, well,
therein lies the challenge.
You have to change. But if you're saying, nope, this is what I want, going back to the gentleman, Dr. Vance, if that's the pace I want for my life, like he designed his life where he and his wife take Fridays off and that's their time. Their kids are in school so he works 4 days and he finds the revenue and ways to make his money in those 4 days so he can do it because that's the pace of his life. And he's comfortable with it until nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong. And he's happy until he says, maybe I want to change. But then that's going back to what you were saying, it's intentional of now I'm changing versus the complaining, I didn't do this, right? It all goes back to understanding what your why is, making it intentional, creating a strategy, creating a plan, executing it, and then long-term get there versus getting beat up in the short term based on outside influences.
Right. And again, nothing's easy.
No.
There's nothing's easy. There's no, and that's why I love it. Everybody's like, you look at somebody on social media like, well, that's easy. It's like, no, it's not.
No, it's not. No, trust me, it's not. All right. So listen, this has been phenomenal. You and I could just sit and chat long time. I love talking with you. So 2 things first, and then we'll get into our final questions. Just your name of your book again, because I have it and I just want people to know where to get it.
The name of the book is Do More. So do, M-O-O-R-E, got to play on your own name.
Yep.
Get More, spelled regular M-O-R-E, on Amazon.com.
Great. Okay. So at the end of every show, we ask questions. So these are, I've sort of titled them the one thing. So we're going to ask you a few things. So one place that you would like to have traveled that you haven't been to yet.
Ooh, that's a good one. We were talking about that too. One place I want to travel, because we're big Disney people. I'd like to go to all of the Disneys outside of the US.
Ooh, that would be interesting. Okay. What's the one food that end of the day you think you cook the best?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, even you vouch this one. I cook any type of steak. I crush steaks. So I'm not, that one, I got the title. Come on.
Okay. The movie or show that when you run across it on TV, you stop and you watch it.
Well, there's a few, but I'll go with my favorite, Rocky.
Okay. What's the book or that you're listening to, or something that you're reading or listening to that's inspiring you right now that you would share with others?
Your Next 5 Moves.
Great. We'll put that into the show notes. 2 questions. Bring your close family, close friends all together in a room. Describe Dan in 1 word. What is the most common word they will use?
Ooh. Yeah, there's a lot. I got one on here. You could probably answer it for me. Man,
Hold on, I got a notification. I'll say no. I'm kidding.
Yeah. I would say most of the time I hear is humble.
Humble. Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. Last question. Out of everything we talked about, if there's one thing you hope that the listeners take away from this conversation, one thing, what do you think that one thing you would hope they would take away would be?
I hope that one thing is just look in the mirror and challenge what they're doing. And if they're on solid ground, great, but just having that honest moment with yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. It's just you against you. I
love that. Love that. Love that. Well, listen, thanks again. I appreciate it. You know how much you mean to me. You've been a phenomenal supporter for me as well. So where can people connect with you on social media? And you should, folks, connect with Dan. Where can they find you?
I am on pretty much every channel. You can go to my site, do more, get more, moreofdan.com. Pretty much easy to get a hold of. And again, if I can help anybody, you want to shoot me a DM, have a question, you want to, challenge this a little bit and say I'm full of it. I'd love to connect. Always up for a conversation.
And I would highly recommend it because he will challenge you. He makes you think. That is one good thing. So again, Dan, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Now, for all of you listening, again, do not forget to please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, be it on Apple or Spotify or whatever platform, or jump over to YouTube, subscribe if you want to watch Dan and I's conversation. I really appreciate it. And I know there's a lot of places where you can listen to content, and the fact that you spend some time with Dan and me means the world to me. Please make sure you share this out. There's a lot of people that could use this information. And as always, please rate the podcast. Also comment below. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, and who you'd like me to interview as well. So as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge, but Dan has now given you a few more things to help you become better, both professionally and personally, so that you become the leader that you want to be. Thanks again. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.